has 100 mobile generators ready to assist voting stations around the country. Well, this is, of course, should it be necessary. This is according to the Public Enterprises Minister, Pravin Gordhan. Gordhan made the commitment during a media briefing yesterday when he tried to assure the citizens that the polls will not be disrupted by the lack of power. Let's discuss the challenges at the power utility with Mr. Mike Rossouw. He is CEO of Independent Energy Thought Leaders and also a former Eskom advisor. Mr. Rossouw, a very good afternoon to you and thank you for your time. Now, you are a former advisor at Eskom. What would you be advising them of now?
Well, I think so my advice would be, unfortunately, not painless, and definitely politically would be a major challenge, I would believe, but it has to be done. And the first thing is to explain to the public exactly what's going on. I don't believe this is actually happening. It's true that the minister and others have explained that the situation is serious, but I think the extent to which this crisis is hitting us has not been explained, and the reasons why. So step number one, we're going to have to play open kimono, and everybody needs to understand exactly what the situation is, because this problem is with us for some time now. It's going to be with us for a while.
You say that this is just the tip of the iceberg, that the extent of the problem has not been adequately communicated, you believe. How dire do you believe the problem really is?
The situation at the moment is worse than it's ever been. And the problem is, not only is it very bad, and as I said, worse than it's ever been, it's getting worse by the day. And the factors that are contributing to this are many. But as I said, you've got to start by sorry, let me just do that. There we go. And you have to explain the full situation to the public. They have to understand exactly how dire the situation is. And I don't believe the public do understand.
And what do you believe has been the cause of the situation that we're finding ourselves in with rolling blackouts?
Well, I think the immediate issue that's in our faces is that the extent of breakdowns and plant that's not available to be used is greater than it's ever been. I mean, we're running at a situation where nearly 50%, certainly near 60% of the fleet is unavailable. Or shall I say is available, therefore nearly 50% is unavailable, 40% unavailable. So it's like owning 10 vehicles for a taxi operation, but only 5 are available. That's the situation we face. And every day more and more of these units are breaking down, unplanned. In other words, that it's simply a breakdown.
We heard Minister Pravin Gordhan yesterday saying that a large part of what we're experiencing now has to do with issues of stage capture and previous leadership at Eskom. What are your views and your comments on that?
It's true that it's a factor, but you must understand this is accumulation of over a long time. To me, the great disappointment is that there's been more than enough time now. Since I was in Eskom advising, 2014-15, there's been more than enough time to recover the situation. At the time, I made a detailed assessment of every single power station, and in my reckoning, by 5 years after that, in other words, 2020, we should have been out of this problem. But we are not, which simply says that they have not followed through with the recommendations that I've made. They have followed pretty much business as usual. And at the same time, at the power stations, the situation has become worse by the day.
And why do you think they would not follow through on the recommendations that have been made?
I think first and foremost politically. Many of the things that have to be done are politically unpalatable, or that people don't want to say. And now with elections looming, it's even less likely that the politicians are going to say the things that have to be said. But in my personal view, to fix this, it's not the time anymore to play politics or to play the blame game. What we have to do is face the real problems, explain to the public what's going on, and
Mr. Rossouw, I'm going to ask you to give us some specifics here. When you talk about the reasons why there hasn't been the requisite action, you say it's politically unpalatable.
Yeah.
Give us details.
Well, first and foremost, the older plants, which everybody has spoken about, are in need of urgent work. But unfortunately, the extent of work that they demand exceeds the resources and capacity within Eskom. So it's better to basically turn away from those plants, and in any case, their contribution in terms of capacity is small, and focus resources and attention on the larger plants. And at the moment, what bothers me is even the larger plants are breaking down. I mean, to make it even worse, the newer plants, Medupi and Kusile, a number of those units are not working to full capacity, and they're struggling to get them to full capacity, and it transpires there are construction and design issues in both those plants. So we're sitting with virtually a perfect storm. The big power stations are not performing to standard. The maintenance work that has to be done is not being done properly. A lot of the plants that are taken out for maintenance, hardly do they return for operations, then they break down again. And then the whole situation is complicated by planning, and it's totally inadequate. Plants are taken out for major work, and then they discover issues in the unit that were not identified in the planning process. So it's the worst of everything.
Which brings us back to this point. The minister said that it was a human error. Structural mistakes were found, and those structural mistakes have led us to the point where we are now. Does Eskom have the requisite manpower, intellectual know-how, the engineers that are needed in order to man an operation of this nature?
To me, when I was there, I can honestly say that they did, but I have good information to hand that those skills and the necessary experience that's required to turn the situation around is not there. So many of the power station managers have left, and these are men with 20 years and more experience. And so the power stations are now left with good people, but without the requisite experience and without the necessary or satisfactory skills in place. This issue about an error, it's but one of many. I can assure you there are many, many human errors being made. And it's not because of willful, it's basically people that are just not sufficiently experienced.
Talking about people, some South Africans and some from various quarters have said that the minister needs to resign, that Andre de Ruyter needs to step down. They haven't been managed to solve the situation. Promises are being made, which are constantly being broken. Your thoughts?
Well, it's true that a number of compacts are being made on an ongoing basis. It's the standard within Eskom for power stations to submit their targets. These are revised and they are given to them, and then they are being held to account to keep to those targets. But those targets and standards and commitments that have been made are being broken left, right, and centre, and it's not being picked up. And then a new set of standards are being put down, or a new set of targets are being put down, and this continues, which just tells me it's business as usual. And this is not business as usual. And it's easy to say that extraordinary measures need to be made, as the minister has said, which is true. But the problem is we don't see it on the ground.
The solutions that have been put forward to use diesel in the interim, what do you think of that?
I beg your pardon, to me, just say again?
The solutions to use diesel in the interim, is that a good one?
Yeah, they are using diesel in the interim, but obviously, as you very, very expensive generating plant. I mean, this plant is 3, 4, 5 times more expensive than the normal generation. So that's the first problem. Secondly, the replenishment of diesel to these units is a problem, the logistics in terms of ships and rail and trucks and so on. So that is a problem. They're also using pump storage, which is necessary in the emergencies such as this. But the problem with pump storage, as you know, is they have to pump the water back up after it's been used. So that's why we're seeing load shedding on the weekends, because they're trying to replenish the water supplies. So as I said, it's a perfect storm, and I see no light at the end of the tunnel. I don't see any signs of recovery I have.
So, Mr. Rossouw, if things don't change, what then for South Africa and our lighting situation?
To me, the situation is, this is going to make COVID-19 look like a walk in the park. Sad to say, because the unfortunate truth with Eskom and power in South Africa is that we're an integrated grid, which basically means if things go wrong, it goes wrong instantaneously everywhere. And we don't have the resources to cover a situation like that. We are possibly looking at increased violence. We are looking at services falling over, water supplies being interrupted, hospitals, urgent and being affected. It doesn't look good to me. It doesn't look good at all.
And as far as alternative energy sources for South Africa?
Well, there are, in particular, IPPs, the gas program, which has been long overdue and has been delayed again. But my big concern is that they are still messing around in signing up the IPPs. The board is dragging its feet. Government is not coming to the party. And by now, we should have signed up much more IPPs than is the case. The consequence is that consumers, even industrial consumers and so on, are taking control of their own power supplies. The net of this means that Eskom have even less sales, which means less revenue, which means less room to move in. This is the situation we face.
Mr. Mike Rossouw, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Doom and gloom all round, according to what he is forecasting. You will remember that he is a former advisor at Eskom, and also he is CEO of the Independent Energy Thought Leaders.